All major theme parks have delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked, said John. Malcolm replied, "Yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists." Recognize this quote's movie? Stay tuned to find out, or check out the title of this episode of Talking Pictures Trivia.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me is...
Tom.
And KJ.
Additionally, joining us as a guest this week is...
I'm Chris.
Thanks for joining us. Chris has joined us for countless movies and will be quizzing us on our upcoming Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings episode. Chris conveniently likes movies. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with a movie quiz, as these pivotal questions will determine who earns today's trivia crown. In round 1, each question is worth 1 point, and in round 2, each question is worth 2 points. Then, once the fierce competition is over, we follow it up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Walking up to theaters in 1993, we would have had to choose between Hot Shot Part 2, Super Mario Brothers, Last Action Hero, Sleepless in Seattle, and today's movie, Jurassic Park. Nick will be quizzing us today. Nick, what is Jurassic Park all about?
So there's this eccentric, really wealthy guy named John Hammond, and he says, you know what? Wouldn't it be a great idea if we brought dinosaurs back on the planet? I'm sure nothing would go wrong. And in fact, I'll have a bunch of people, including my grandkids, come to the park before it's really ready and see how it goes. That's the movie, I swear. We'll talk more about it as we continue. Tom, if you only had one word to describe Jurassic Park, what would it be?
Promethean. Chris?
I went with momentous. What about you, KJ?
Majestic.
I'm going to go with... Da-na-na-na-na. Is that one word?
I'm pretty sure it is.
It's a leitmotif.
The dinosaurs leitmotif?
I don't know.
It's time for question 1.
What is the first glimpse of a dinosaur we see in Jurassic Park?
Locked in.
Locked in.
Be specific.
When that last word there, Jurassic Park, are you referring to the movie or the park?
The beautiful answer is both.
I'm fairly confident you never see a dinosaur off park, right?
All right, let me think about this one. Well, so in Quizzo, sometimes you got to just go with what the quizzer wants, even if you're not sure. So locked in.
What do I want then?
In the opening scene, they're getting a caged dinosaur into another facility. And during that scene, you see a glimpse. And be specific, says Nick, which means he either wants, do we see its eyes? I don't think so. I think we might see a claw that kind of wraps around the cage thing as it's being pushed. So I'm going with the claw of the dinosaur in the first scene.
I believe Tom was second.
We see the Velociraptor's eye in the opening scene because as the raptor is moving into the cage from the holding pen, he or she rather bangs into it, knocking the gate lifter attendant off. Robert Muldoon grabs the guy as he's being dragged in, and he looks and he sees the eye of the Velociraptor. The Velociraptor sees him, and it's very dramatic. What was the first dinosaur in the book? There's a better question.
We'll save that for later.
Okay.
I actually do know the answer to that question. But Chris, what is your answer to this question?
I'm going to mirror what these guys said. It's the Velociraptor in the metal box that takes 27 people to move the box, but only one person can lift the gate, apparently. But yes, so Muldoon rushes over and you see him looking in, and the Velociraptor is obviously looking back. And I think it's the first time that you're supposed to get a glimpse at their intelligence. So Velociraptor.
The unautomated gate. Spared no expense.
On the box that doesn't lock to the facility either. Like that's also important.
So, for question one, I'm sad to say there will be no points awarded. You guys are so close. This was a little bit of a trick question. The eye is the most memorable part of that scene, but you do actually see the first raptor run out. So you see the first raptor run out, which just messes up the gate, and then the eye comes after that. So sorry, no points on that. But that's exactly why I did it, because the most memorable part is that eye, but you actually did see the one running away first. However, I just wanted this as an excuse to start talking about dinosaurs. What do we think about all these cool dinosaurs?
This movie had some of the best. I don't know if you have a question about special effects or a reason to talk about that later, but this was some of the best special effects ever. I just saw the new Doctor Strange movie, the Doctor Strange 2, and I would argue that some of the dinosaur special effects in this movie were better than the gigantic tentacle eye in Doctor Strange. Like, and this was 1993. This was 20 years ago. No, it was just 30 years ago. My apologies. Some of the best special effects and the dinosaurs, whether they were mechanical animatronics or whether they were CGI, they all looked fantastic.
And they were a blend too. They used multiple different methods. We could talk about it later, but I have a topic that can blend either way. So I agree with you on that. This is why I was saying last week, this movie really stood out and really enhanced our expectations of CGI in the early 90s.
Well, I think what's so great about it, it's Stan Winston who did not the CGI aspects, but the live action automatrons. And we know Stan Winston, he designed the Queen from Aliens, the sequel to Alien. And this was the next step up. And so, he made the dinosaur, including a full-size automatronic Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yes.
If you see like behind the scenes, it is the size of the thing in the movie. So it's like they built these skeletons and then covered them in skin. I mean, it's what's great about that is that it doesn't age. And while there is CGI, and I think the CGI ages a little bit. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
It did a bit, but for the time frame, it was amazing. Early 90s, it was great.
But what makes the movie age so well is that so little of it is CGI. So much of it is these kind of practical, these puppets, which I think they had up to 20 different puppeteers operating the velociraptors. And so that it's really good special effects are kind of hard to top, even with CGI, even the magic that CGI gives us. My other great example is An American Werewolf in London. The werewolf scene is another great example of practical effects. But hats off to Stan Winston and the work he's done on this. Even if they scaled back on the realism of the dinosaurs, the example there would be Velociraptor, which looks nothing like an actual Velociraptor, which was kind of like a foot high. I think the best description I heard of a Velociraptor is it is a razor chicken. It's about as ferocious as a chicken is. But whatever, man. They're really, really great animatronic work.
Yeah, the special effects were amazing, and the dinosaurs looked really good. But the one thing that struck me on this watch was in the beginning, Grant's talking about how they evolved into birds. So I looked into it a little bit, real quick on Wikipedia, guys. I didn't really read a lot. But in the 80s was the first time somebody said, hey, I think dinosaurs became birds. And they went so far as to say dinosaurs probably had feathers. So it's a little strange that this movie acknowledged that, but then made the baby boomers dinosaurs.
Yeah, and we've actually found fossilized feathers, or scientists have. What Spielberg had told Winston, I had read an interview in which they recount this, was Winston wanted more multicolored dinosaurs that reflect the kind of feather covering. And Spielberg said, gray and brown and black are scary. Feathers are not scary. And if you've seen markups of what like a velociraptor or a Utah raptor, any of these things look like with feathers, it's not that frightening. So
it would have changed the whole.
Yeah, he wasn't going for realism here.
He was and he wasn't. He was going for realism, but remember, we're being entertained.
Well, we all know that Tyrannosaurus Rex can't see you if you don't move, right? That you found that out in the fossils.
How do they know that?
They don't. They don't know it.
I suppose they're in.
They made it up.
Yeah, that's something they point out in the book. And Chris, I know, did you read the book recently, Chris, or reread the book recently?
I actually just reread the book over the last month or so. I stopped when our schedule got a little out of line, but I did reread it just recently.
I just finished it yesterday, so I'm right there with you. But in the book, they make this really good point that actually we don't really know very much. Like, we can't really learn that much from Alan Grant makes this point. We can't really learn that much from Bone. So I think in the book they kind of discover these things, and I guess they just say Alan Grant knows this from the evolution of blah 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 into blah blah blah. But it's a little more the mysteries of science are highlighted more in the book.
They took a lot of liberties. That's all they did. Even like, what is it? The Dilophosaurus. There was no proof that they had that
The frill.
frills. Yeah.
And also
yeah.
the Dilophosaurus.
Spits poison.
The Dilophosaurus was also about 8 feet tall and weighed about 900 pounds. So it's, it wasn't like a little thing that hopped around and killed Newman.
But entertaining nonetheless, as we keep pointing out.
It's time for question 2.
Aside from John Hammond's, plural, who was the narrator of the initial Jurassic Park lab tour?
Oh.
Locked in.
All the hard-hitting questions today.
Locked in.
Locked in.
KJ?
The DNA strand.
Okay, it would be Tom next.
I also had the DNA strand.
Mr. DNA.
Oh, the point goes to Chris. The most correct answer. His name is Mr. DNA. He had a very formal name. That's why I have to give it to Chris. Yes, Mr. DNA is the other narrator. Now, of course, this brings up the topic of technology, and that's why, Chris, I was saying technology can go either way. We can talk about the technology making the movie, which we kind of already did, but I'd like to talk about the technology in the movie.
So this whole sequence here where they're doing the lab tour is really what made my mind blow for science at the time. Like, I think I was in 4th or 5th grade when this came out. I had already gone through my kiddie dinosaur phase. So like you had kind of said, this was nostalgic a little bit. Oh, it's dinosaurs on TV. That's awesome. But it was the scene where they start talking about DNA, because I think I had probably just learned it in school that last year in like 4th grade. And then this movie comes out and I'm like, oh my goodness, that crap that my science teacher was blathering on about could actually be useful and do something cool, like make dinosaurs. And even though I knew it was science fiction and the movies are fake, it was just kind of enlightening that, science fiction is a thing, and it really opened the doors to lots of different things. And the technology that they use is not great, but I mean, it's still interesting that they had this story, that they had this idea, because Crichton actually wrote the book in 90. This is a fun fact. It only took two and a half years to get it from the published date of the book to the theatrical opening of the movie.
Crazy if you think
which
about
is
it.
so quick. But he was in Hollywood to begin with, so I think Spielberg knew this book was coming before it was actually published. But yeah, the technology, it's fantastic, and some of the visuals they give you with I really like the very closing scenes. The Velociraptor has the A's, the T's, the C's, the G's on its face, like it's projected on its face. I thought that was like a cool little thing.
Do we know where that was projected from?
No idea. It was never projected anywhere else except for that scene.
Right,
on
like
that
what was it,
dinosaur.
the computer screen with all their vents made out of that? I was trying to figure out.
No, because it was it makes no sense whatsoever, but it was awesome.
Chris, as a man of science, what do you think about them trying to use amphibian frog DNA to plug up DNA from a reptile? That would never work.
It's all they use an emu egg, they use amphibian DNA. They needed a plot point to make them turn from female to male is what they needed, and he had read somewhere that frogs could do that, I think. I'm okay with it because I love the movie, but at the same time, it's probably not good science.
And since we're doing an adaptation block audience, talking about the approach this movie has to the advancements of science compared to the book, they share a worldview, but maybe not a tone. The book is extremely cautious and almost scolding about the advancements of science. Ian Malcolm in the book is sort of the voice piece of Crichton, you imagine, and he is on a soapbox. He's an incredibly annoying character in the book. God bless Jeff Goldblum for turning him into somebody who's like charismatic and interesting. Because in the book, he's like speeches about the damage of science and how terrible it is, and
Fire
how
and brimstone.
he's not really fire and brimstone. He's not like the world will end because he thinks the world is greater than that. He has this idea of science as being this like this thing from the Enlightenment that needs to end. He has like this kind of modernist's view of science, and he thinks that
It's time to invade.
time to invade. There we go. Yeah,
There it is.
There it is. Yeah, it's that science is kind of invading and bound to fail, and all this stuff. It's incredibly annoying. And the movie, I think, has this worldview too. It is saying, much in the vein of like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, be wary of what you discover, be wary of what you explore and unveil. The ethical questions about why and should we discover something are as important as can we discover or unveil something, right? The movie, though, kind of falls into that contradiction of our technology has advanced so much to give us a great spectacular, like the blockbuster Jurassic Park, that is telling us to be wary of great spectacular advancements. The book is maybe a little more forgivable in the sense that it's a book and not a great kind of CGI and experience. But the movie is also much more gentle. It doesn't feel as dark as the book. The book feels heavy. I don't know if you agree, Chris, but I mean, we learn about the dangers of dinosaurs in the beginning of the book when a few Procompsognathus, eat the face off a baby. That's how we learn that dinosaurs are dangerous. So the tone is very different.
And they take that into the sequel, correct?
Yeah, that's the opening scene of the sequel.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah.
I actually had this in my room variant part. Like, they took so many things from this original book and sprinkled it in all the movies to come. Like, even the idea of blue from, I don't know if any of you have seen Jurassic World, but there was a blue beta velociraptor that one of the characters is training, and they actually even talk about in the very last scene of the book how one of the animals has stripes on them, and they are the alpha. They're the one that's obviously in charge, that are trying to migrate, which is another bird-like thing that they do. I have no idea where I was going with this, but
just how they took other parts of the original source material.
Oh yeah, and then the
put it
aviary.
elsewhere.
The aviary was in Jurassic World, and there's a jungle river I think was in Jurassic Park 3. And then the beach scene with the girl holding out her hand and the compy getting her, like all that's from this original book, which they just kind of continued to pick away at. I do think the book is I like the movie better than the book, honestly. They change a whole lot. The book is really different. And maybe it's just because I saw the movie first and I have such a visual acuity. Like, I really like seeing things. So maybe that's why I like it better. But I like the movie better just because it is a little less brimstone and doom and gloom.
Another thing that I don't always remember correctly is man didn't clone anything until 4 years after this movie, right? Dolly the sheep was 97, I think. So this was more science fiction at the time. And nowadays, our computers are so much faster. When they're talking about going through the DNA sequencing, I mean, it might not be trivial now, but I imagine it's not as daunting as it was in 1993.
You're absolutely right about the cloning, though. That was still very much sci-fi and not reality.
It was definitely theoretical, though. Like,
Yes.
I say we, like I was a scientist then. Scientists thought of the idea of being able to clone. Now that once they figured out, because DNA was discovered in the 50s, once they figured out how simple it actually was, they realized it probably wouldn't be so hard to kind of work backwards to actually turn something from DNA into a living thing. And although we didn't make Dolly until the late 90s, the theoreticalness of it was very, very old.
At the end of round one, Chris is ahead by 1 point. Tom and KJ still have plenty of time to get some points on the board in round two. We'll be right back soon after this brief break.
Hello,
And welcome back to
B-Side. Finally, it is B-Side. Today we're going to be talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We're going to be discussing the famous W.F. Murnau film from 1927, Sunrise. The Icelandic movie from 2015, Rams. Juzo Itami's 1985 picture, Tampopo. And today I'm going to be talking about a good old film that we just covered, and this is 1984's Ghostbusters.
Talking Pictures Trivia B-Side, wherever you listen to Talking Pictures Trivia.
And we're back. We're at the critical point of our episode where we ask the guests a key question. If you could write your own sequel for Jurassic Park, not including any of the multitude of sequels that exist, what would it be?
All right. So obviously you could just go and see any of the ones that are already out there. But when I was a kid watching this for the first time, I was enamored by the Barbasol can that falls into the dirt that has the 15 embryos in it. And that never gets paid off in the end of this movie, which I didn't expect it to, but it also never gets paid off really in any of the sequel movies that have come since. Now, my guess is that we're supposed to be led to the fact that the embryos die from lack of refrigeration. But in my sequel, we head thousands of years into the future, and the Barbasol can has been fossilized itself in the muddy soil.
Nice.
And some alien species finds the Barbasol can with embryos and makes new dinosaurs, and thinks that that's what the Earth was like all the time, was these dinosaurs there. Completely outlandish. It's going to make $1 million. Thank you very much.
Might make more.
I was going to say $1 million isn't that much for a blockbuster.
I'm gonna make it for about $16.50 in my backyard. So it's,
with the toys he had from pre-K.
So is it going to be like Planet of the Apes finds it? Are we doing Planet of the Apes?
Planet of the
Jurassic
Apes.
Park?
Planet of the Apes means dinosaurs.
Planet of the Dinosaurs?
Something I don't know. It doesn't have to be aliens or Planet of the Apes or anything like that. But I've always been enamored with what happens with that Barbasol can. Like, we're led to believe that it's now sitting there waiting for somebody to find it. I doubt anybody would before the embryos died, but what if they did, and what could happen?
Maybe the aliens will think that's the intelligent species that used to occupy this planet, and they bring them back and they kill all the aliens.
And then the aliens are gonna say, "Clever girl."
I really liked John Hammond in this movie, and I wouldn't mind a movie all about his flea circus and like the ridicule and the trials and tribulations that he went through then, how he became the eccentric millionaire that he is today.
I don't know if they went over this in the movie. I think they might have alluded to it, but in the book, didn't he like originally start with like a miniature elephant or something? Wasn't there?
Yeah.
They had made a pygmy elephant. That's how they went around to get all their investors to give money to the park, where they had this like little miniature elephant that they would show off, like, this is what we can do with genetic science. And people were just throwing money at him. And then he created dinosaurs and ruined the planet.
Wow. So if this movie is kind of similar to Frankenstein in a lot of ways, that's kind of similar to Bride of Frankenstein. He's making the small version of...
Sure.
Sure.
Dinosaur good.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. In the book, John Hammond is the villain. Like the straight up villain. And in this book, he's the most avuncular of avuncular.
He's Walt Disney.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Very good. Yeah, he's Walt Disney. Yep. Yeah.
I would even say Walt Disney mixed with the prospector from Treasure of Sierra Madre. Right?
Yeah, the thing with that guy though is the Walter Houston character Howard is like, he kind of gets that we're all after money, and John Hammond in this movie is like not that interested in money. He just wants to give spectacles. And in the book, he's literally like, we're here to entertain the rich kids to make money. And I think he has a line where he goes
No,
like,
but they'll have a coupon day, Tom, right?
Yeah. In the book, he actually has a line where he's like, I don't want to help humanity. It's like that level of villain. He also seems to hate his grandchildren in the book too. He's a completely different character. He's totally this like capitalist villain. That's the whole book. That was another great adaptation change. Was
I agree.
turning John Hammond into somebody
I
likable.
agree.
They also go a lot more in the book about the espionage of the one company trying to steal the embryos from the other. Like we get the scene with Dennis Nedry getting the cash and like steal these things, but we don't really get the whole backstory about what it is and who Dotson is and who the other company that's behind the scenes is. I also don't think we needed it. I think the movie has a better pace because we cut it out, but there's a lot more nuance in the book about like how dastardly and dirty these scientists are that are trying to make profit.
Yeah, it's the book opens. Do you remember, Chris, the opening chapter of the book, the introduction? It's a list of it's a list slash rant of all the companies that are now making money off of genetic research and how this is the new investment thing, and this is going to outpace the computer easily, which didn't happen exactly. But it is, the book is like really, really, really brutal in terms of scientific discovery as being something that somebody might make some money off of, or even scientific discovery generally. It's very, very like intense in that sense.
It's time for question 3.
How does Dr. Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, make a living professionally?
Locked in.
Locked in.
Locked in?
KJ?
He's a mathematician that writes books, I think.
Tom?
He's a chaotician.
Chris?
So yeah, in the truck, he calls himself a mathematician, but then immediately corrects himself to say that he's actually a chaotician, as Tom said.
In a rare change of fate, I'm going to give everyone points because you all hit on different elements. KJ is the most lenient of the answers that is getting points. He is a very gifted mathematician who specializes in chaos theory. So everyone hit kind of one of those points. So yes, that's what he does. But what I want to talk about is the concept of man versus nature prominently displayed in this film.
Well, the chaos theory element is actually a lot of fun. I think it's pretty interesting. It's more prominent in the book, obviously, because the book they can explain these things. And there's something in the book called the Malcolm effect, which is not present in the movie. But the idea of man versus nature is best probably explained in terms of the weather, right? Where we can't predict the weather because nature itself is so unpredictable. There's so many elements that go into the system that we call the weather that you can't calculate it. That tends to be the thing, or that is the thing that Ian Malcolm is bringing to John Hammond. He's saying the system you're attempting is so complicated that you can't really plan it out, right? You can't know all of the details that go into creation. You can't control this. There's sort of an emergent order type argument going on there, and that ends up being what kills them, is that they just cannot plan for something this complex.
Yeah, I feel like I totally agree with what Tom said, but I'm going to take this in a different direction. I feel like this is the millennials monster movie. So like in the 50s, people like my parents, they would have had like the Godzillas that were coming over from Japan and those movies. And then the 70s, then you have your Jaws, you have your monster versus man kind of thing. And I feel like this is another one of those monster versus man, but for our generation, which is why it's made so much money and why they continue to make new ones. Now that we're in our 30s and 40s, spending all the money on toys and games and going to the movies, they're continuing the trend. But yeah, it's a trope that I really enjoy. I watch literally every monster movie that ever comes out, but at the same time, like it's really kind of just rehashing the same thing. Like it's kind of like Frankenstein, where they make something they shouldn't, and then it attacks them, and they wonder why that happened. And Malcolm is the individual in the book and the movie that knows that it's going to happen before it happens, which is kind of interesting. Like, you're so. I think he even says at the dinner table scene where he slams his fist on the things, like, you've put it on lunch boxes before you even realize what you've done. And I think that's a really telling kind of point, that if you think logically about it, yeah, maybe it's not the best idea to make like a 50-ton dinosaur that's got gigantic teeth that could eat you, or eat you off the toilet when you're trying to run away from it.
Life finds a way.
Yeah, so Chris, going back to this is our monster movie, and even building on the theme that Nick's bringing up, man versus nature. So in King Kong, man defeats nature with technology, specifically the planes that kind of shoot him off of the.
But man brings him to their society, right?
Right.
Which is the entire plot of Lost World, by the way. They bring the Tyrannosaurus Rex to San Diego.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But then in Godzilla, man comes up with the technology to, I think, evaporate water very fast, and this defeats Godzilla. But in Jurassic Park, man never defeats nature. We flee. We get out of there. At the climax of the movie, nature saves man from nature, and then they hop on the chopper and get out. So
get to the chopper.
Do you think Arnold Schwarzenegger would have improved Jurassic Park?
No.
It's a T-Rex.
He would have been shooting them with big guns.
What was the girl's name?
Lex.
Oh, I thought you were going to start making me do Schwarzenegger quotes.
Lexi, it's a man-eating dinosaur.
I hope you have enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach.
I'm going to make you extinct. But
I didn't try to do a Schwarzenegger, just the words.
But again, in Jurassic Park, the conclusion is a lot different than most of the man versus nature stories, and certainly a lot of the monster stories. We don't defeat the monster here, right? We create them and then we tuck tail and run.
In the book, they napalm the island. They destroy them all.
Well, that happened.
The velociraptors get off. You're led to believe they migrate into the mountains of Costa Rica.
Well, we already know that the compies are off
and
island.
The compies have also gotten off. Yeah, I think the difference here in terms of man versus nature is that in like King Kong or in Godzilla or something like, I don't think it's necessarily true in King Kong, but certainly in the Godzilla things, there is this idea of environmental damage as being something that's going to come back and bite us, right? With the Frankenstein story, which is what Jurassic Park is, it's a Frankenstein story. It's that the sheer act of creation, the will of creation itself, is something godlike and incredible and to be admired, but also extremely dangerous. And that's the Prometheus story. The Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to mankind, and as a punishment for this, he was chained to a rock and had either his intestines or his liver chewed out by a vulture every day. And at the end of the day, the liver would grow back and the vulture would come back and chew it out the next day. And the idea being that, like, this sort of invasion of nature or taking on the role of the creative force of nature is going to inherently have some kind of punishment. And
Malcolm says that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm goes through that whole sequence where I guess in his thing, we don't exactly become gods, but we kill the gods to allow us to make dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly. The Nietzschean thing. Yeah.
Right.
And then women inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Right. But Tom, at the end of this movie, what's the conclusion?
I think the conclusion at the end is that it's the Promethean one, right? It's the Frankenstein one. It's in the end that the creator kills the master. Now, granted, John Hammond lives and whatever.
Did you mean the creation kills the master?
Yes, the creation kills the master. And yes, they don't blow up the island. These dinosaurs presumably continue on, or if you believe that the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 are quote unquote canon. But the park falls apart. The evidence that you can control nature, that this is something that you can play with and make to be your own and make to be, make in your own image, right? Make to be an entertainment for you. That's completely betrayed. The entertainment is gone. The value that this thing was supposed to have for us and for the kids from all over the world who are going to come seeing dinosaurs and be happy, that's gone, because nature is something that you cannot control and shape in your own image. You are not God. You never will be.
It's time for question 4.
What was the anticipated payday amount that Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, would have received upon delivery if he didn't get lost on his way to the East Dock?
Locked in.
Oh, I have to do math.
Locked in with a guess. A 1990s guess, but still a guess.
I didn't ask for inflation adjusted, so you're good, KJ.
I think I have it. I'm gonna lock in. Yeah.
Okay, Tom, you're going to lead the pack this time. Not KJ for a change.
I think so. It's, oh Lord, it's like 750 up front, 50,000 per species. I think it's 1.5 million.
I thought it was 750K total.
The brown satchel has $750,000 in it, and then he's told he can have 50,000 for all 15 embryos each. So that makes that 1.5 million.
Okay, everyone answered it in a variety of different ways, but I'm going to have to give it to, sorry, Tom, KJ and Chris, because I was asking what the anticipated payday amount would be upon delivery of that last payment. So it wasn't the initial 750K.
Right.
It would have been 750K. KJ, you worded differently, but you did utter the word 750K. But Chris is going to take down the episode. He is exactly right. Tom, you were close. It was 15 embryos times 50K. Your math was right, but the upon delivery was only half, which would have been that 7.
Yeah, I gave you the total amount of money he was going to make.
Yes. So, Chris, congratulations on the episode. Honestly, you guys did a great job because I asked wonky questions, so you really did a good job there. But
it helps that I've seen this movie like 20 times.
Yeah, you were kind of with the early lock-in, so I figured you would be good there. Now, we may have already addressed this one, but there are elements maybe not. I was really going to go with the concepts of power and or greed that really are shown prominently in this film.
Yeah, they're more when we think of the book, the greed stuff is more prominent, right? It's all about
Nedry. We could talk about Nedry.
Yeah, and Donald, Gennaro, and Nedry are the two embodiments of greed, right? And which is a little unfair to poor Gennaro, who actually survives the book. He's somewhat more likable in the book. He doesn't exactly run away from the children. That's somebody else's job. But anybody who thinks they can make money off the island, obviously they have to die. They have to be punished, which is pretty standard Hollywood trope, right? If you're interested in how I can make a buck off of this thing, then there has to be some kind of comeuppance for you, which of course is ironic considering that Spielberg is the master of the blockbuster. But whatever, that's pretty commonplace. And it's greed kind of which brings the island down, right? Wouldn't you say? That's the chaos that Hammond couldn't plan for.
I like the scene where he mentions that the only one on his side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
Yeah, you can definitely tell Michael Crichton doesn't like lawyers. Gennaro in the movie is actually an amalgamation of like 2 or 3 characters from the book. All of them are kind of jammed together in this one kind of unlikable individual that gets eaten by the Tyrannosaur. Nedry and his greed, and this goes back to Hammond. Hammond says they spared no expense. Well, it's the reason that Nedry wants to rob him is because he did spare expenses, apparently, with
just on Nedry
paying Nedry.
I did find it interesting, and I always do every time I watch this film, that the downfall is the one place where he cheaped out.
Well, but there's no evidence that he cheaped out.
Yeah.
Right? It could just been Newman wanted more and more and more and more and more.
Newman.
Jerry.
In the book, there's glitches, and Nedry's firm wants more money to deal with them, and Hammond says that that's underneath the original contract, and that kind of frustrates him. Yeah, it also is indicated that Nedry is having personal financial problems, and that's kind
Like
of
gambling or something? I feel like they alluded to that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's Hammond just says, "I'm sorry, Nedry, you have these financial problems, but they are your problems. I don't blame people for their mistakes. I only ask that they
Yeah,
deal."
yeah.
It seems to point to Nedry's just a jerk, right? Nedry's the fly in the drink, and that's what's
You didn't say the magic word.
The other greed that I kind of really liked is Hammond's greed, which isn't for money, but there's something he's desperately missing and he wants, and he exudes it with his sarcasm. Right, he opens up their bottle of champagne at their dig site without talking to them, asking them, because he knows exactly what he's going to say that's going to win them over anyway. I mean, he's funding them, so he has a greed that's driving him, but I'm not really sure what it's for.
it's for discovery, right? It's what Frankenstein wanted. He wanted to discover this new thing. Right?
Maybe,
He
but when
wanted
he's
to make
talking
it
about that
real.
flea circus, there's
I was
no
gonna
discovery there.
I feel like he wants to be remembered. Like he wants legacy. Like he has the
Yes,
flea
definitely.
circus. He's ridiculed for it. He's like, I tried to create something that would entertain people and they don't like it. I'm gonna make something that they can't possibly forget. And I feel like that's where it kind of came from for him.
It's time for Movie Rant.
So I figure I'd start with something light in movie rant. How about we just go over what the bonus tiebreaker would have been if we needed it? I'm just curious if anyone actually knows this one. My money would be on Chris if anyone. Don't take it personal. Here we go. What is the name of the backdoor program Dennis Nedry made to disable a plethora of the park systems?
Was it like phone something or other? Something with the
I don't
phones.
remember this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
This is
he verbally says I gotta reset the phones or something, and things might go wonky. And then I'm pretty sure on the screen I thought I saw something with the phones. I was like, ooh, in case somebody's looking over his shoulders, they'll think he's.
Well, I'll just tell you because I don't think anyone's going to get it. He initiated, it looks like whiterabbit.obj, but it's
Oh.
WHTERBT.obj.
I feel stupid for not saying White Rabbit was on my tongue.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
But I was totally guessing because like a lot of I didn't know that was the answer. I don't remember it from the movie. I don't remember seeing that. But a lot of times, whenever there's some sort of a little wormhole you got to travel down, they always go back to
Yep.
Lewis Carroll and the White Rabbit. Like it's like the Matrix and the White Rabbit.
Yep, exactly.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what was different in the book versus the movie, because I said before, I think the movie is better than the book. And literally, you can go down the cast of characters and who lives at the end. Those are probably people that are dead in the book. Like, Muldoon actually survives the book. He gets on the helicopter and goes away. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler do. The kids do.
Hammond dies, right?
Malcolm dies. Hammond dies.
Yeah.
Like they go back and visit Malcolm in the book quite a few times. Oh, he's still drugged up. Oh, he's still losing he's still losing blood. Oh, they're going back to him over and over again just so that you could watch him die at the end. Like it seemed a little gratuitous, honestly.
Gennaro.
Gennaro, the one character Gennaro lives, even though his other combined characters, they all die.
Yeah. Ed, I think, was the other one.
Yeah, Ed Regis, the
publicity manager. Yeah.
Yep.
It seems like the reason why they keep going back to Malcolm in all of this is so that Malcolm can explain his philosophy. That's why they keep visiting Malcolm as he's dying, is so he can jump on a soapbox and talk about, the problems of scientific investigation. And then John Hammond could go, I don't know what he's talking about, which would prompt Malcolm to keep talking. Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. The movie is so much better than the book.
Well, the winner of all that, being a survivor, is Jeff Goldblum. This film, not that he wasn't known at all, but this film really propelled him into some major blockbusters for years to come.
Well, he did The Fly before this.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. And then that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he was an unknown, but this really put him center stage.
Yeah, and God bless Jeff. Jeff Goldblum was one of the best changes, I think. Because I don't know, you could tell me, Chris, what you thought about Ian Malcolm in the book. I think he's a windbag. I think he's utterly irritating. And Jeff Goldblum is so charming. He takes these ideas and instead of like slamming his fist and being angry about it, he turns himself into this like Lothario mathematician in his black leather jacket. I loved his performance.
And his sex appeal, Tom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he does have sex appeal though, right? He is, you could see him as somebody
More than Grant.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, Grant is kind of a bore in this. Though to be fair, he's also not a character in the book. There's like the things we know about Grant in the book is he likes to be casual and he had a wife who died some time ago, but we don't know anything about that relationship or, what have you. He's also not in a relationship with Ellie Sattler, who's also not a character in the book, but she's an outline of a human being. All we know is she's 24, she's a paleobotanist, she has nice legs because they tell us that, and she's going to marry a doctor from Chicago. That's all we know about her. She has almost no personality. And one of the best things about the movie, I think, is also Laura Dern. Having Laura Dern with all her charisma and sex appeal and just the wonderful way she plays beats come in and fill in this barely written character.
Although I will say her injured running is not necessarily the best I've seen. Am I the only one there, by the way? Am I the only one?
That scene with her, like, I don't know when she gets injured. Like, why is she limping at that part anyhow? I guess because she's dragging the flashlight behind her. And then two scenes later, now Tim has got the same mysterious injury to his ankle as he's trying to run the dinosaur into the freezer.
Well, he literally at least fell from a car into a tree. Like he had some things going on.
We get electrocuted.
He's seen some things.
I don't know, Chris, as somebody who's also read the book recently, what did you think of the way characters are designed in the book?
I totally agree. I actually put it in my show notes here that Alan Grant is more developed in the movie than he is in the book. I think that's true of all the characters. You're spot on with Ellie Sattler. You're spot on with Malcolm. I think that Jeff Goldblum brought the essence of the character as written, but brought it in such a way that it wasn't so talking down to you. It was more explaining it to you. And I think that made it all the better. So yeah, I think the casting was spot on, even if the age differential was really weird, considering that the movie, they tried to make you think like there was something going on between Grant and Ellie. My wife had actually told me that Laura Dern was like 24, 25 in the movie when she filmed the movie, and Alan Grant was in his 40s when he would, like, the actor was like about 40 when he shot the film. Like, so it was a weird age differential for that. And she is supposed to be his student in the book. That doesn't really come across in the movie, but that's what it was supposed to be.
I didn't think she was a student in the movie. I thought they were just...
Yeah, they seem more like partners.
No, they're definitely together in the movie. Like they're even talking about having kids at some point. But in the book, she's definitely his student, hanging out, and like Tom said, getting married to somebody else eventually.
And also there is a line in the book where Alan goes, "I like children." That, he actually, there has a little speech where he talks about how much he likes children. So that's also been altered.
It literally took 2 scenes in the movie of Alan talking to the kid with the Velociraptor a hook and like slicing him across the belly for you to know everything you need to know about that character. Like, he is straight to business. And then the resourcefulness of him is when they're in the helicopter and he ties the seatbelt. Like, this is a guy that can survive some crap because he can just problem solve on the fly, which I thought was very, very simple scene, but told you so much about that character that you didn't need to know anymore. Like, that was enough.
Yeah, and all the seatbelts in that scene told you stuff about the different characters. But Tom, while I was watching the beginning of this movie, I said, "Oh, I know what Tom's going to say," and let me know if you agree. This movie is very economic. Like, it just moved pretty quick and told you a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, no, but you're right. I think that is a thing I would say, and I think it is accurate. Spielberg, another way to say it is Spielberg is a filmmaker, right? He's not maybe our smartest filmmaker, but he is a really good one. And he knows how to tell a story with action and not with talking heads, right? And I think that's a really good point, that you bring up, KJ, and Chris, you bring up as well with your examples of like, we get to know who Alan Grant is with that kind of story with the Velociraptor hook, but also, as you're pointing out, KJ and Chris as well, like the seatbelts tell us everything, right? Watching these characters tie seatbelts gives us a world of information without having to have them just kind of talking heads explain things, which an inferior director might succumb to.
I have something that is definitely out of the film, but I just thought was really interesting or funny. So apparently, Dennis Nedry's outfits in Jurassic Park are the same as three characters in the Goonies, like the exact outfits. So he has the
when you meet him, he's Chunk.
Yes. So when you meet him, he's Chunk with his Hawaiian shirts. When he has this like gray jacket, he resembles an outfit that Mouth was wearing. And then when he's got his rain jacket, he looks like Mikey. So it has nothing to do with the film, but it's too on the money to just be a coincidence.
That's awesome. I'll add a little piece of trivia that I know about it. Alan Grant, I don't know if it was the book or the movie version, but they were actually modeled on a New Jersey native. He actually grew up in Bergen County. His name is Robert Backer. He's the first guy that actually said that dinosaurs had to be warm-blooded, specifically the Brontosaurus. And when the characters first see the Brachiosaur in the field in the first one, Alan Grant actually even says there's no way he's cold-blooded. He has to be warm-blooded. Like that's a callback to, he's a relatively famous paleontologist in that era that actually grew up in New Jersey. So that was kind of a cool little hometown throw. Is he?
Him. Yeah, he says, and there's other.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They mentioned the book.
Robert Barker also has a book I actually read as a kid. It is a biography of a velociraptor living in the time of, the late Cretaceous, which is a fun read. Like called Red Raptor or something like that.
It was fiction, right? I think that was a fiction book.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny though, when I think back to pre-K, for some reason we all wanted to be paleontologists. Like we knew that specific scientific field, nothing else, but we all wanted to be paleontologists until we realized what that meant. A lot of hot summers in the desert, just like with little brushes.
I have a question for everyone. Like this whole like kind of anti-Promethean thing going on. Do you guys buy it?
No. I mean, we have to be
this
careful.
Has been Talking Pictures Trivia.
We have to be careful, yeah, but like, and maybe Hammond was reckless, but then it wouldn't be a fun movie if he wasn't reckless, right? Like,
it's I know.
I think I'm more worried about Skynet than the dinosaur uprising. So.
Are we talking about this in terms of real life, or are we talking about it in terms of this movie?
Well, I don't know. Take it wherever you like. But I find it, one of the things I find frustrating with this movie is, and kind of movies like it, it's where WALL-E does this as well, right? Where it's like the great technology is going to ruin everything, but it also made possible WALL-E. And it also makes possible Jurassic Park. And so it just seems to be self-contradicting. And the book is brutal. I mean, the book is just what percentage of the book, Chris, is devoted to ranting about technology? Like
there's quite a bit. Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah,
I think I'll say yes and no to your original question. I think that it's dangerous in that it always changes life. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. So like when we invented the car, we didn't have to have horse farmers anymore. So those individuals kind of saw it as this devastating destruction. But then it made other things possible, like the suburbs and sprawl and things like that. And then now that cars have become an issue because we have too much pollution, and then it's always this. It's like it's an ever-changing landscape. So I think the technology and the development of it is dangerous and scary at the time, but at the same time, if we don't come up with those technologies, we don't grow as a civilization or a people. So yeah, it's bad in the fact that it's going to change people's lives, some for the better, some for the worse. But I think it's inevitable. Like somebody's going to do it, and we should just hopefully try to do it correctly.
Let's be honest. In this present world, if the ultra wealthy had the science to create Jurassic Park, they would create Jurassic Park. Without it, I mean, I'd love to hear someone argue it.
Yeah.
Super wealthy do crazy stuff because they can.
Yeah. I just, I wasn't, not to go off, I wasn't trying to go so far off the movie. I just always find it somewhat frustrating when watching a movie like this, and it's complaining about the advancement of technology, which often is used to make entertaining things like the movie itself. I always find those kind of things a tad frustrating, and it especially comes from like this kind of Promethean literature tradition where like creation is this great power, and like being able to create is like stealing fire from the gods, and that's what a rebel is. And so like in the history of this literature, if you think of like Prometheus Unbound by Percy Bysshe Shelley, or a similar poem by Goethe, there is this idea of yeah, we're gonna create the wildness and screw the gods who want to prevent us. I kind of like that energy more.
Is Jurassic Park the movie saying that, or is
no
specifically Malcolm saying the speed at which Hammond moved, or the end goal of Hammond was an amusement park, not the science? Right? Is that the complaint in Jurassic Park? Is
But
that
Hammond
the warning?
Hammond says like, what's so good about discovery? It's a penetrating act. What you call discovery, I call the rape of the natural world.
Yeah, Malcolm, right? Malcolm says that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. True. But would Malcolm have had a problem if he showed up and they had one dinosaur in one small little thing where they were just seeing, like testing the technology? If he had shown up 10 or 20 years earlier, I don't know how long it took to develop this, and if Hammond was taking it in a different direction, would Malcolm have had a similar problem?
I would say he would. That's just my opinion. Because you're still going in that direction. Because he sees where it's going to go, not necessarily where it is.
Yeah, I think he would say that kind of discovery inevitably leads to chaos that you can't really control. So even having one dinosaur in a small little pen, the system is still so complicated that it's not going to work the way you want it to.
Well, the only one able to control the chaos this week was Chris Modelevich, who took down this episode. So congratulations once again, Chris.
I'm gonna use my time here to say what a transition that was. Holy moly, that was amazing. Well done, Nick. Well done.
We've been practicing.
Nailed it.
There's different methods to keep me quiet.
You can find more of our content wherever you listen to podcasts, on our YouTube channel, Twitter @Talking Studios, and our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com. We're extremely grateful to all those who subscribe, like, follow, and leave a review. John Hammond, genius or madman? Let us know on Twitter, talkingpicturestrivia@gmail.com, or give us a call at 201-467-8679. Thanks again, Chris, for joining us today.
Absolutely, guys. This is always a lot of fun. I can't wait to do the Lord of the Rings episodes with you guys. It's going to be a blast.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be fun.
You can find me on Twitter @ThomasLehman15.
And you can find me on Twitter @KJ10001000.
I can also be found on Twitter @TheNicknamed. Join us next time when we discuss KJ's recommendation from Japan in 2001, The Happiness of Katakuris. Stay tuned for our first impressions of this film.
Next week, we'll be discussing The Happiness of the Katakuris. Pat, how was your watch?
KJ asked me to do this recording on a Japanese remake of a Korean horror movie, and it's a musical. And I thought, wow, those are many, many words that do not apply to films that I usually would be willing to watch. But I said, okay, I will take one for the team and I will do it. So that also meant that I cannot watch it. I figured I could not watch it when I had my kids with me during the day. So I got up at 4:00 in the morning to get up and watch this movie before the kids were awake. It's a trip. It is definitely a trip, especially at 4 a.m. But it is very interesting film. It is not a film I would normally watch, but it is a very, very interesting film. I can't wait to talk further about it next week. Chris, what about you?
I too was asked by KJ to watch this film, and I'm not one to dabble in Japanese films too often, but the last one I watched was House, which was also one that KJ had mentioned, and that ended up being just it's like such a bonkers ride. I had to watch this one too, and boy was I not let down with some of the stuff that was in this film, because it was out of control, in a good way. I enjoyed it. I laughed out loud probably 3 or 4 times, which I don't know if I was supposed to, but I did. And I, you know what? It's one of those movies that I never would have watched either unless KJ had brought it up. So I'm glad he did, and I too cannot wait to talk more about it because it's something else. What about you, Tom?
So I also learned about this movie from KJ very, very recently, probably within the last week. And I watched the movie that it's based on, the 1998 movie, The Quiet Family, a South Korean movie, which I thought was pretty awful. It's a pretty terrible movie. And I was not looking forward to watching this. And this movie is Citizen Kane compared to its original. And I'm not, I will say, overly fond of this movie. I had laughed out loud like you did, Chris, quite a number of times. There's a few things like when the sad family comes in with that recorder, I couldn't stop laughing at that girl playing that recorder and the boy coughing. You're just waiting for this poor boy to die. Like, I thought that was so funny. It's and it is very imaginative. What's interesting about it is like many of the musical numbers aren't that imaginative, despite the fact that the movie itself is kind of bonkers. The musical numbers they're actually, not only are they kind of lame in their lyrics, but they don't look like anything really. And so that was kind of disappointing because I really like musicals and we have not done a musical, and I was looking forward to that facet of the movie, and it's actually probably the worst part of it. There's a lot more interesting things than that. How about you, KJ? How was your first watch?
First of all, thanks guys for at the last minute jumping in on this and jumping into a Japanese musical based on a Korean horror film. I had caught this movie on Amazon Prime a few years back. The poster, I saw the poster. I don't know if you guys have seen the poster, but it looks very much like Sound of Music, but it's a little bit sillier. And I then read the description and I was all in. After watching the movie, I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it to the show. Because like you say, Tom, the musical aspect, like the songs aren't that good. The numbers aren't that good. There might be one or two in there that are worth it. But the bonkers plot and just the way the movie unfolds, if you don't know what's coming, it's very surprising. But I think I would treat it more like a fun oddity that's in Barnum's American Museum or something, as opposed to a proper film. The happiness of the categories is not available on any of the streaming services at the time of this recording, but as I said, it's been on Amazon Prime, so keep a lookout.
It's on Tubi.
Oh, it's on Tubi.
Yeah,
It was. I watched it on Tubi. Yeah,
that's how I watched it, and it had closed caption too.
Audience at home, while Nick's gathering his questions, Tom's doing dinosaur impressions in the camera.
Velociraptor.
Ding, ding, ding.
They just look like this.
You just naturally look like a velociraptor.
No, their eyes are always kind of like their teeth are always.
Tom is always thinking, planning. Tom hunts in packs.
Tom is always planning how to murder the children.
Tom is a clever girl.